My name's Kyle. I'm a recovered drug addict. Yeah, is that customary here? Thanks, guys, for asking me to speak, Tommy, and thanks to the group for having me here. It's been probably about a year since I spoke here. I think I did my story last time. This time you guys gave me a curveball. So I'm going to do my best attempt on 6 and 7 here, and I prayed on the way in, and still drawing a blank. So steps 6 and 7 in the big book are really a couple of paragraphs in a prayer, right? So I'm going to, fortunately for me, since it's not so much, I'm just going to read all three of them, you know. So I'm actually going to start on the paragraph before 6 and 7 starts, where it's in 75 there, right? So assuming we've just done a 5th step, we've swallowed and digested some large chunks of truth about ourselves, and we've seen what's wrong with the stock in trade of our lives, so to say. We've gone through the fabric of our lives and seen how selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, and fear has just ran our entire lives. So returning home for an hour, it tells us to find a quiet place to hang out. And I'm not sure how you guys are, but when I was doing this step, I think I had a few days sober, and sitting quietly for an hour was like, I don't know, it'd probably be easier to give this talk than it was to sit quietly for an hour with a few days sober after just learning literally how big of a piece of garbage I am. And that it had not all been their fault, and it, in fact, was all my fault. And so we go home for an hour, carefully review. So it tells us I love this book because this is a book of hints. It gives us clear-cut directions on exactly what to do. It doesn't say to go home and sit there with your legs crossed and your fingers like a Buddhist monk or something. It tells us to go home, return for an hour, and review what we've done. Have we skimped on the steps so far? Am I sure that I'm a drug addict? You know, for recording purposes, I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, so if that slips in, I apologize. But am I sold out on the first 5 steps, right? Am I sold out that I'm a drug addict, and regardless of what consequences are in the way, what the lawyer has to say, what trouble I'm going to get in with my family, am I sold out that I'm going to get loaded again no matter what? Am I sold out that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity? Have I truly agreed to go through with the rest of the steps? More importantly for me, after I had done my 5th step, I had held on some of the worst items in stock, right? Stuff that doesn't show up on a grudge list. It shows up on a weird sex list, you know, some strange things I did, you know, like I would have been more than happy to tell you that I'd like stabbed somebody, because I would have at that point in my life thought it was cool. What I've come to find out, and sponsored quite a few people who are apparently just as weird as I am, that usually the worst thing I'm holding on to in stock is some inappropriate relationship I had with a man or an animal. One of the two. I'm not going to tell you guys which one was me, but I fall into one of those categories, and I'm hanging on to this, and it's burning up my mind. It's all I could think about in this hour, after doing my 5th step. And for some reason, and this is some kind of God inside me, because I don't tell people that stuff, because you're going to think I'm super weird, and I'm not going to be liked by you guys, right? Which is the most important thing in my life, is for you guys, literally a group of strangers, to think the world of me. And I call my sponsor and I say, hey, man, I got this going on. And at the time I had a different sponsor, and he was not, I don't think he had ever done anything like that. I'm pretty sure it fucking blew him back. Excuse my mouth. I'm pretty sure it blew him back a little bit. And all he said was, you're on the broad highway, my friend, and hung up. And I remember like, well, I can't go back to that big group on Friday nights. They're all going to be laughing at me, which whatever. So, but what I'm trying to drive at is I had enough willingness to where for the first time in my life, I cared more about doing this all the way than I did about cutting a corner to look cool. Because that's all I've ever done my whole life, is make choices based on how it's going to make me look, not based on what the outcomes are going to be. And so I take this hour, I do that. It says, carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we've omitted anything, which I had at that point, right? And I finally gave it up. For we're building an arch through which we will walk a free man. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? So it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? And I didn't hear Caleb's talk last week. I'm sure he did a fucking phenomenal job, just a top-notch job, better than I could ever do on 5. And I'm not going to step on your toes, hopefully, but where I find where these objectionable things is in a 5th step, right? I don't know that my selfishness is objectionable until I look at how it has ruled my life. I don't know that this fear is objectionable until I do a 5th step with another man and find out how it's literally, my life is shot through with it, right? It's a corroding thread our book talks about. My life has completely been run on fear, selfishness, and self-seeking. So that's where I found out it was they were objectionable. So it says, can God now take them all, everyone? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing, which is a 6-step prayer. And so it says, when ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you really take a look at that further. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Which I was told, and maybe this is wrong, maybe this is right, I don't know, but my sponsor told me that there was no amen at the end of the 3rd step prayer because it wasn't complete until you had said a 7th-step prayer. That's why there's an amen on the end of this one and not on the 3rd-step prayer. So with that being read, after being sober a little while, 6 and 7 has some different meanings to me, and I remember being like, man, I would hear people talk about 6 and 7 in meetings, and I would hear speakers speak on 6 and 7, and I was like, it's really selling us short in the big book, but it's not. I think it's exactly perfect for what a new idiot like me, who's just still shaking, coming off of the last run. Just to qualify a little bit, I am a drug addict. I do love to shoot speedballs to excess, and I chased that into homelessness at the age of 17, and I remained homeless until I was 25 and sobered up. More importantly, it cured something inside of me, that it fixed something. It fixed that part of me that there's something is missing thing that I was dealing with all my life and can still struggle with today. Drugs and alcohol fixed that for me, particularly opiates. The crack, I don't know what that did. It made me really crazy, and I was like hiding from people who weren't chasing me, but it didn't fix it. But I don't know why I continued to do that. But heroin really fixed it for me, very good. This is perfect when I'm first going, and for what I know today is God gives me just enough, just when I need it, right? And God takes just enough, just when I need it taken away, so that I can do steps 8 and 9. God removes from me just enough of my character defects so that I can do steps 8 and 9 and start to make some of this stuff right with the people I've wronged. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I'll say unfortunately, as we go along this path, this stuff kind of changes a little bit, right? And 6 and 7 starts to take on a different meaning. And I don't want to scare anybody who's new. So if you aren't to this part, don't even worry about it, man. Just worry about that, just getting through the steps and getting to work with other guys as quickly as possible and getting recovered and getting on this way of life, because it's second to none. I mean to tell you, I was the kind of guy who would have traded my life for anything. I'm a barber by trade, and I was cutting a friend of mine's hair today, and he's going to a wedding, and this guy got hit. Some of you guys remember when the halfway house guys got hit by the fucking ramp of the handicap truck, and the guy got like $6 million. And I was like, and he's in a wheelchair for life. He can't keep his organs in his body. They pop out all the time. And I'm just like, that lucky son of a bitch. I'm sitting here working on my 2 good feet, and this guy just doesn't have to work ever again. He gets to ride a wheelchair, which is cool. But that's where my mind is, man. I'm always looking for the easy way out, but I don't have that today. Today I'm grateful for what I have. I remember telling my buddy this morning, I'm like, man, you can keep the $6 million on account of that. But I wouldn't trade my life with anybody today. I have a great life as a direct result of doing these steps. But I get through this 5th step, and I see exactly how bad selfishness and fear has ran my life in the 4th column of the resentment inventory. And I was completely ready to have God remove all those things so that I could stay sober and I could start to carry this message to somebody else. I was entirely willing to have God remove that for that purpose, right? Now, as the years go on, I didn't realize it meant all of it, right? When the prayer says everything, I didn't realize it, because I just want him to take the drinking stuff and leave me some other stuff like lust and greed and stuff like that to have fun with. Now, if you're new, don't worry about that, because you don't got to worry about that. But if you're not so new, this is where we're headed. And I've listened to a lot of speakers on this, and it was funny. I just had a cancer scare earlier this year, and I remember they found a tumor in my humerus bone, in my top of my humerus bone's like in your shoulder essentially. I think it's this full bone here, but it was in my shoulder, and I remember they were like, we're going to do a PET scan to see if you have cancer. Now, a PET scan scans your entire body for cancer. I'm a guy, I've been smoking cigarettes since I was like 8 years old. And I was like, whoa. I was like, we don't need to know about the whole body. We have this shoulder problem, right? Because I did not want perfect help. I just wanted to get my shoulder squared away so that I could be free of that fear. And more realistically, so my wife would shut up about it. I did not want perfect help. I did not want to know if I had lung cancer, brain cancer, any cancer. I just wanted to know that I did not have shoulder cancer. And that's how I go about these shortcomings, right? I don't want to have lust fully taken away because I still, but I mean, it's all guys here for recording's sake. I still want to have sex with a lot of women, or certainly at least my wife. But if that doesn't work out, I got to have some of that energy, right? I got to get back out there, right? But I want enough, and I love the 12 and 12, and I'm trying not to talk on the 12 and 12 too much in a big book meeting, but it is amazing, particularly with step 6 and 7. It talks about this is the step that separates the men from the boys, because this is truly where I start to take steps towards not being lustful. I start to take steps towards not being so greedy. I try to take steps towards not being such a gossip, because I realize how it's ruining my life. Right in this book, it says, leaving aside the drink question, we ask why living is so unsatisfactory. And living is so unsatisfactory because I'm completely off the beam spiritually in every area of my life. Right? When I come in here, I've got this huge gunshot wound, which is drug and alcohol addiction. And we get that fixed up, and I got all these other issues with my body that I've never seen a doctor about. And this is where we start to address those. Because what we come into contact in this program through doing these steps is perfect power. Right? We don't have half-assed power. We don't have just the cancer scan on the shoulder. We have perfect help. And the only way a guy like me gets to wanting perfect help in step 6, I wish I could tell you it was easy, is by beating my head against the wall, just like I did with drugs and alcohol. I let lust beat me up so bad that I lose a marriage, or I let greed beat me up so bad that I'm basically just a thief in in Drug Addicts Anonymous, or whatever Anonymous, trying to live a spiritual life, right? I can remember before I got loaded, right? Meaning I got loaded as a direct result of doing some of this shady shit. I had about 6 years of sobriety, and I was selling tons of steroids out of greed, right? Greed, and probably pride too. I thought it was kind of cool, sober drug dealer sort of deal. And I could never make drug dealing work before. So this was like working. I was making a lot of money, and I was like, this is great. I'm finally successful in something in my life. But I didn't want perfect help back then. I just wanted to be not enough greedy to where I'm, like I used to. I used to walk around parking lots and jingle door handles to see what the car was open, or if you left a purse around me, I'm certainly going through that. Medicine cabinets, you name it, I'm going through it if you're not around. I want it removed enough not to be a total scumbag. Like, I don't want to rob Walmart anymore, but if I want to sell a little steroids on the side because I got bills to pay and mouths to feed, that should be perfectly fine. And for me, I beat myself up enough to where I got loaded again, right? I got to a place where I either had to eat a bullet or drink again, and luckily for me and my family's sake, I drank again. So that's how for me personally, that's how I become entirely ready. I wish I could tell you newer guys that it was an easier, softer way to becoming entirely ready. But for me, it comes from a lot of pain, right? And in other literature, it says pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. And that is 100% my experience. The more pain I go through and try every angle to get the jaywalking idea out of my head, so to say, every angle to get the, you name it, right? I'm trying to break it down into like the 7 deadly sins, but you could say whatever you want to get the stealing idea out of my head, to get the dishonesty, to get the gossiping stuff out of me. I try on my own power, of course, because these are things that I should be able to manage, right? The alcohol and drugs, I definitely couldn't stop on my own, but it should be easy to stop, like, talking shit about people, or it should be easy to stop cheating on my wife. Like, that's got to be a me problem. I don't need God for that, which is agnostic. And that's how I become entirely ready, when I exhaust all options and I lose a marriage, or I lose sobriety, or I lose whatever. Or, this ain't a losing deal. I could just be so internally distraught that I fucking hate my life in sobriety. And the name of the game for me in sobriety is to be happy and sober at the same time. And the more I do that, the less happy and sober I am. But I do a fifth step, and I find out a whole lot about me. I find out that I'm trying to think of a good example here. My fear, right? Because some people will have you write I don't know. My sponsor gave me the dumb guy's approach to AA for good reason, but I've heard of people where the sponsor is just writing character defects as they're doing an inventory. And if that's what your guy does, that's cool. But my guy gave me like 4, right? They were enough for me to see how they had just ruined my life. It was enough for me to see that I had used, like, I'll use like my dad ran out when I was like 3 or 4 years old as a kid, and he was a total like dirtbag, criminal, alcoholic junkie. It's like me, probably like some of you guys. And I remember just hating that guy. But not only did I hate him, which is like, I guess, I don't know, maybe that's normal, maybe it's not. The grouch and the brainstorm certainly aren't for us. But I use that to harm a lot of people throughout my life. I use that as selfishly as a direct whatever to not respect any kind of authority in my life, right? The male authority figure in my life had gone away, and I immediately fuck what my teacher says, screw what mom says, screw it, whatever. Certainly the police, when I got older, I was totally a jerk to police officers, any kind of male authority figure. And that sort of selfishness to me today is objectionable, right? And I wanted that removed. That sort of selfishness caused me a lot of pain, caused my family a lot of pain, and I wanted it to be removed. So that step 7 says we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And the only way I know how to humbly ask God, and I love listening to Sandy talk about it, because he used to be like, is that a certain expression you make on your face when you say it? Do you have to hold your hands a certain way? Do you cry? Is that like humbly asking? What I know today to be true is I had to humbly ask the same way I did with drugs and alcohol. When I have totally exhausted every avenue on my own, when I'm totally out of gas, I've tried whatever. I never really tried therapy. I don't believe in therapists, but if you do, that's cool. But I know a lot of people try therapy, so I'll throw that out there. When I've tried therapy or talking to my peers or whatever it is, and I've burned it all out and nothing's working, it seems to be getting worse, then I can go to God like, dude, I've screwed it all up again. Can you please take this from me? Then I can humbly ask him to remove this stuff. And in Bill's story, he talks about removing this stuff root and branch. Right, my newfound friend is what he's calling God in that particular part of his story, was to remove this stuff root and branch. And we have a few like that. I love Bill's writing because he kind of tiptoes on similar subjects all through the book. We just mentioned some of the masonry stuff, this archway through we'll walk a free man. But Bill talked about the root of our problem as well. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. And Bill asked for root and branch to be taken away, right? The branch being the alcoholism or whatever, the root being the selfishness and the fear. And that's what we need to evaluate in a fifth step, find out what's objectionable, and humbly ask him to remove that stuff, root and branch. And I think that's kind of the name of the game of sobriety. I don't know. I don't have as long as some do. But I've been hanging around long enough to know that this is the kind of stuff that keeps me needing and wanting God in my life, right? This kind of stuff, like the drink problem is removed. Or the drug problem has been removed. I've been a recovered alcoholic for some time now, or whatever. And but the other problems seem to crop up on me all the time, especially when it comes to fear. And when I get fearful, I don't know how you guys are. When I get fearful, I react defectively. Normal people get fearful all the time, and they don't like go into depressions. They don't like yell at their children screaming. They don't start a fight with their wife. Normal people get fearful and don't accuse their wife of cheating on them, or get fearful and start cheating on their wife. Like, these are many ways I defectively react to fear, and I do it all the time. A normal person, I made a joke about Jeremy's attire today, and I forget what I said, something about him making me feel better that I didn't wear a collared shirt, and he reacted normally. You could catch me on the wrong day, and I'm like, man, fuck Jeremy, And not only that, but I'll gather a team to say the same thing. I'm like, do you see Jeremy? Tommy, he's a loser. Yeah, I heard he's cheating on his wife, and I can create a whole gossip mill around somebody telling me they don't like my shirt or they don't like something, right? Whatever it is, like I'm just a complete nut. I'm like a child, dude. The more I deal with this stuff, the more I observe alcoholics and observe myself, the more I realize we're literally like children. Like we have no kind of thought process. It's somebody does something to me that triggers my fear, and I immediately react the wrong way. I immediately go into a frenzy. I immediately use it as an excuse to do something terrible, and in these steps, we find a way out of that. In these steps, when we beat ourselves up enough, we can humbly ask God and go to God. And what I know to be true is that stuff can be completely removed. It's not common. I think I've met like 2 people in my entire life that I think have had a lot of this stuff removed. What our 12 and 12 talks about, and it's 100% true in my experience, is that we already have a little example of that in our own lives because he's completely removed the drink problem, right? If anybody in here who identifies as a recovered alcoholic or a recovered drug addict, I didn't wake up today with the thought on my mind of get the money and get loaded, because that's all I ever woke up with. I was always living in the moment. I listened to Tommy speak the other night, and he said it perfectly. Like, I started with 0 and I had to try again. Every single day I was starting on 0 and had to do it all over again. And I don't have that crazy thought anymore. So I know from my own experience that God can completely remove whatever else is there as long as I become entirely willing. And, unfortunately, it takes quite a bit of effort on our part, a lot of working with others, a lot of inventory, a lot of good stuff like that. But we have a lot of cool things to do around here for that. I try to do an inventory at least, every few months, just to get a couple things down and see what's bothering me, what selfishness I still have that's ruining my life, what fear I'm still dealing with. But the cool thing, and I'm kind of stepping on 10 and 11's toes now, but the cool deal about that is because I'm constantly searching for your flaws, right? And that's a big problem in my life. I'm constantly looking for what's wrong with you because it makes me feel better. Really, it just makes me not think about me. But when I'm really on the beam and I'm really doing this stuff, it gets me to leave y'all alone because I'm constantly searching out the flaws within myself, which is what we're supposed to be doing here, and constantly going to God, man, I screwed this one up again. Can you take this fear? I screwed this one up again. Can you take this lust? I just had it today. I came home from work. I worked a hard day today. Got off around 2 o'clock. I thought it was a hard day. I had to stand up the entire time. And I went and picked my kids up from school, which is normal parenting, but I don't normally do it. So I thought I should achieve like some sort of gold star on my, not that we have one, but if there was somebody recording, I thought I earned some kind of badge there. And I made the bed, stuff that should be my wife's job, I think. And she gets home and she's like, this house is a mess. I'm like, but I picked the kids up, and she's like, what have you been doing? I'm like, well, I went to the gym and came home and showered and got the kids. And she's like, you're just sitting on your phone on the couch. And I thought that I had accomplished quite a bit at that point, and I immediately reacted defectively. And one of my chief reactions to when my wife really gets on me is I just threaten to leave. Oh, well, you don't want me here? I'll just find somewhere else to live. You know what I mean? And there's plenty of other women who'd be totally lucky to have me. Like, there's halfway house girls that would form a line to have this opportunity that's been bestowed on you. And I'm here to tell you that is a defective reaction to your wife asking you to wash a dish or something. You know what I mean? And I could probably go down the list with ways that I do that on a daily basis. The cool thing is, the longer I stay sober, the less heated those interactions become, the more aware of it I am, the less pain tolerance I have to deal with it. I used to say something like that, and I'm like, I don't know if you guys are silent scorn people. I didn't even know what that meant until I got sober, but I'm like a Jedi level of it. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I like to use the analogy. So I lived in a house with my stepdad for 3 years without us saying a single word to each other. So we can not talk about it. We can just be pissed and not speak at all. And I think I can beat you out for a long time. And so I'm totally cool with saying something like that to my wife and just sitting there. But I today, thank God, you know, I tried to call my sponsor, and then I just went to God about it, and I was able to make it right with my wife and ask God to remove this defect. Remove this defect that makes me immediately want to run. I'm a runner. I don't know if you guys, anybody can relate with that. I know that's not everybody's deal. Everybody suffers from this stuff in different ways, but I'm a total run. I'm like a cut and run. I have been my whole life. If it's bad in Philly, I'll just rob somebody and move to Florida. If it's bad here, I'll do the same and move to West Virginia. If I'm with this girl and she doesn't like something or she starts to figure me out, I'm just a runner. I ran from high school, ran from every job until I got sober. And that's a defect that I try to work on today and try to ask God to remove from me today. And I shouldn't say work on, because it seems like if you ever see somebody working on their defects, you should be careful around that person. You know what I mean? You know, somebody's working on their patience, stay far away from that individual, or their anger or something. Stay very far from them. But I do go to God and ask him to remove this stuff. And the cool thing, I don't know where it was. I had it. It doesn't matter. So in AA number 3 story, which is something I wanted to break out last night, I didn't get a chance to, which is Bill Dodson, right? Everybody knows the iconic man on the bed picture, probably, maybe not. So it's AA number 3. Bill and Bob go to the hospital and meet this guy, Bill Dodson, and he's on his ass. And this guy gets sober, and Bill Dodson is sober a little while, and he's like, man, there's still just something missing from my sobriety that I'm seeing that Bill and Bob have and some of these other guys have, and he just doesn't have it. And I'm gonna read that for anybody because I see a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous who get sober and kind of turn back to like I was just talking about this earlier with some of them. They've kind of turned back to like the atheist and agnostic after God's performed a literal miracle in their life, and I can relate. Because I don't see it that way, and I wouldn't say it verbally that way, but my actions 100% prove that I'm being agnostic in something. Usually my finances or my romance. And Bill Dodson had some of that going on. And so he talks about this on page 191 if you guys wanted to track. It doesn't matter. So it says it would be hard to estimate how much AA has done, or AA has done for me, right? This is a member of AA, filthy bastard. And it says, I really wanted the program and I wanted to go along with it. I noticed that others seem to have such a release, a happiness, and something that I thought a person ought to have. I was trying to find that answer. I knew that there was even more, something that I haven't gotten. I remember one day, a week or two after I got out of the hospital. So he's talking about there's people around here that you notice, right, that have something more, something that I haven't got yet. And I noticed that in some people. I noticed that in my sponsor. He's got something that I still haven't got. I mean, I've been sober a little while, but some of these people are just walking around freer than I am. I don't know if you guys can have seen that, or maybe you're one of those guys. Maybe Jeremy seems pretty free. The rest of you guys are fucked. I'm just kidding. But you notice this stuff, and what they have is they're working on this 6 and 7 stuff, right? And he goes on to say, a week or two after I come out of the hospital, right? So that just gives you a gauge too if you are new, right? This guy is sober, working with people, talking about a week or two later, right? This guy's already sponsoring people. Doesn't take 6 months to get into this stuff. A week or two. It says, we're eating lunch, and I was listening, trying to find out why they had this release and what they seem to have. And Bill looked across at my wife and said to her, Henrietta, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease that I just want to keep talking about it and telling other people. Right? These guys have total release because they go to God with everything. Right? They take all this stuff to God. And what I hope to relay here is if you're new and suffering and cannot stop getting loaded, right? Like you just keep returning to drinking or keep returning to doing drugs. I get it. The answer is God. Sorry to tell you if you hate God, but we only got one thing to sell you here, and that's it, right? The cool thing about this deal is it says if you're not convinced, you can go try some controlled drinking. That will give you a better knowledge of your condition. But the flip side of that is that we have one solution for all problems. One solution for all problems. Just like before, I never had a problem where I was like, man, I'm going to go at this without shooting up. You know, I was like, no, like I immediately got my shit out and I get some fucking rig that I've had for 3 weeks. It's like it's kind of like wiggle. It's not even solid anymore. You know, it's kind of like a fish hook. And I jam that into some fucking wore out vein. And today I have the same exact sort of deal. Like I have one solution for all problems, whether it's whatever step you're dealing with, but certainly 6 and 7. I realize the problem, I identify the problem, I talk about it with somebody, and I go to God with it, right? I go to God and say, man, I screwed it up again. Can you take this from me now? And the more I do that, the more I can see that it works. Over the years, it truly has worked. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's kind of like, you hear the whack-a-mole game analogy. For me, anyway, I haven't been granted perfect release from this stuff where it hasn't returned. I think for me is I'm such a weirdo that God will remove something from me like lust, and I just go heavier into, whatever it is, greed. And then I beat up greed beats me up pretty good, and I asked God to remove that, and I started looking around at the local prostitute. What's that app called? The list crawler. Check out the old list crawler. See if I know anybody. Offer them some help. You straight away. You used to be in this whatever halfway house around here, and then that pops up, and I'm like, man, what the fuck am I doing? Luckily for me, I haven't. And I use lust a lot because I really used to cheat on my wife all the time. Right, I used to be really bad with it, and I've not cheated on my wife in some years now. But that stuff still returns. I'm at the gym, and I'm like, man, I like to fucking, whatever. And but the cool thing is, just like the drink problem, right? These thoughts happen, but I recoil from them as a hot flame, and that is a direct result of 6 and 7. I recoil from that stuff as a hot flame. I haven't robbed anybody in forever. Still get greedy, but it's not greed enough to rob anybody. But the name of the deal here is, this is where we kind of change gears from, our book talks about progress, not perfection, and I think Bill wrote that perfectly because he knew if he told us we had to be perfect, we would be like, screw that, we have no chance. But this is where we really try to go towards spiritual perfection, right? This is where we try to really look in all areas of my life. And I know if you're new, you're like, holy shit. Excuse me, in Virginia used to say, excuse me, I'm just here for the drinking. But this is truly seeking God in all areas of my life to be a complete person, right? Our 12 and 12 says that AA, which would be DAA, is a group of principles, spiritual in nature, which enable the sufferer, which is me, or maybe you if you relate, to become happily and usefully whole, WHOLE, a whole person. And I become a whole person by striving towards perfection, by identifying every little defect, every little thing over the years, and more are going to come up that I haven't even suffered from yet. I've never gotten rich yet, so maybe we'll see. I'm looking forward to if that ever happens, what kind of defects come with that. But certainly I'm a judgmental prick. This is one that I'll just share this and shut up. I don't know even what time it is. But recently I think I was talking with Tommy outside of a meeting about this Tommy. He asked me about a job that he got, and he asked me if it was what I thought about it, because he, I guess, was offered the same job, working in this place, which is weird. This is really the bookends, and I said I don't think it's a good idea at all, and the job title was a little bit misleading, but I thought it was like a paid sponsorship job, and I said, there's no way, dude. I said, you're fucking nuts, and I said, if Thomas is doing that, he's probably closer to a drink than he realizes, and he goes, well, Chris said, and Chris is one of my closest friends of, 12 years now, he's my old sponsor. And I said, well, fuck Chris. I disagree with what Chris says, too. I said, that doesn't matter what Chris said. What are you going to use to dangle that over my head? Like, Chris didn't write this book, thank you, regardless how popular he is around here. And there was a new guy there who's sponsored by Chris, who has just had a spiritual experience, and he didn't like that. And my immediate, so I didn't know that at the time, and that is a defect of character, by the way, that's pride popping up in my life, like I'm some kind of special and I know better, and I'm going to say F somebody to prove my point, because that's defective. I don't need to do that to prove any kind of point, nor do I have to agree with anybody, but this kid was really upset about that, and this is a guy that... So this ended up hurting me somewhat financially, because he was a customer of mine as well, but that's not really what I cared about. I cared because I want everybody to like me, and I'm a guy that doesn't really like anybody, right? I don't like nobody, but I desperately want you guys to all like me, which is really screwed up. But he now didn't like me, and I could tell because I went to a meeting and I said, hey, man, and he kind of gave me like a quick nod and walked off, and I said, that's probably me. You know, I'm spiritual enough today to take that one time and be like, yeah, that's probably my perception. And then he did it again, and Tommy was there, and I go, what the fuck's wrong with this guy, Tommy? I should fucking kick this guy's ass. And which is another defective character. I get fearful and want to become violent, which is crazy when I'm really just terrified. And he goes, dude, he goes, honestly, and he told me what happened. And still my reaction was, screw him. Screw him. Chris is my friend forever. I've already talked to Thomas about it because I'd cut his hair in between then and found out that I was wrong. And I was able to say, I even told Thomas, I said, man, I was wrong about that. I felt this way. No, I don't. But I never made it right with this other guy, Chris. And he was pissed, and I talked to him at a meeting the other day, but that just shows how we've cleared it up now, but that shows how my defects of character not only harm me, but I continue dead sober, stone sober almost as long as I've ever been. You know, God willing, I'll have 5 years back in next month. And at 5 years sober, giving talks in Newport Richie, sponsoring people, I could still let my defects get so out of control that they harm a new person and could potentially drive them away from our group, which is, to me, I truly feel completely blessed that I fell into the group that I did. And that could potentially drive a guy, maybe not all the way out, but could drive him away from our group. And that's something I had to go to God, and I was like, man, I really screwed this up. And I've been mother effing this guy for 2 weeks now because he gave me a quick head nod, and I'm his superior in my crazy head, you know, because I'm trying to make a big name for myself in an anonymous program, which is like a retard, you know, like trying to be the smartest person on a short bus. And I thought that he had publicly disrespected me, publicly being more important. It's like an enhanced charge, you know, if you've been in court, that's an enhanced charge. And I was wrong the whole time. I was dead wrong the whole time. I had totally, my defects of character had flared out, and it had harmed him. And I can remember, and I'm not going to mention a name on tape because it's a circuit speaker. I remember I was in his shoes at one point, and it really made me sympathetic. We were at an international convention, me and the same Chris that I had supposedly talked bad about. And there's a huge circuit speaker getting up there, and he asked Chris to get him a soda. And Chris, you know, any of you guys that know Chris at a convention, like a freaking overwhelmed toy, and he gets him a soda. And now I don't know how to act as a human being at this point. All I know is homeless on the street, being a whack job, and in my mind, Chris had saved my life, and I truly believe he did. God used him 100% to save my life. Like, I'm not discounting that at all. And he gives this guy this soda. In fact, I think the guy's friend, if I'm remembering right, grabs the soda out of Chris's hand, hands it to this circuit speaker, and the guy says thank you real quick to the guy the middleman, not to my savior, and walks off. And I was like, I'm probably going to stab this motherfucker. You know, so this guy totally publicly disrespected him. He just got him a nice drink, and it's a full circle, and I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not understanding where this guy comes from, because I'm full of these character defects still today. And thank God for that, because if I was driven white as snow, as our other literature talks about, there would be no more need for God. There would be no more need for Tommy to ask me to speak in a DAA meeting and me say yes. Somebody asked me for another favor, and I say yes. I still work with new guys today. I was working with a new guy Monday. There's no point for me to be working with a new guy if I have no more need for God. So this stuff keeps me banging my head against the wall and keeps me going to God saying, dude, I still don't got it. I still need you. So that's probably as best as I can do for you on 6 and 7, buddy. I really want to thank you guys for having me at the group again, and thanks, Tommy, for asking me, man.
Thanks.